And I had a chance to talk with John Elliott, the African Advocacy Director at the Human Rights Watch, about some of the human rights challenges in Africa and countries of great concern.
For me, the number one crisis in Africa has to be Somalia, followed closely, sadly, by the Democratic Republic of the Congo, particularly the east of the country, although there are problems elsewhere. And we've got serious problems at the moment in South Kivu in eastern Congo with hundreds of thousands of people having been displaced.
How do you categorize countries where there is a government that is totally in control of the whole country, but there are human rights violations, as opposed to a country, say, like Somalia, where the government of transition perhaps controls just a few blocks of the town of Mogadishu?
It's a complex place. Several dozen countries, each with a strong cultural backdrop, different histories, different languages. So it's very important, I think, to not to generalize, but to look at specific areas and specific problems in the context of the region.
But in terms of accountability, say in countries, say like Uganda or Kenya, isn't that a situation that is a bit different? Because you can say, well, the government is in charge and perhaps the government is condoning human rights violations, whereas the person in Mogadishu may say, we're not in control of this country, we're trying our best.
Well, you can certainly point to systematic abuses in countries where there are definitely repressive states and repressive regimes in place. And you've named some of the countries where there are serious problems, and governments choose to be repressive. They don't have to be repressive, but they choose to be, either to protect a personal or political or group interest. In Somalia, yes, you're right, there is a notional government, but there are also abusive actors in Somalia who choose to violate the rights of their fellow citizens. So, of course, international law and international institutions focus primarily on states, but we try not to distinguish between that. We're simply interested in who is causing abuse, what those reasons are, and how to stop that from happening. You also mentioned rightly failed states, in a sense. The Congo is not like Somalia. There is a state. The reach of that state is open to question, and the actors within that state are a big part of the problem, particularly when it comes to the armed forces. And the armed forces in eastern Congo are now committing as many human rights abuses as rebel groups and militia groups. So it's a particular problem to Congo. But I would hesitate to generalize too much. I think we need to focus specifically on individual country situations and understand the reasons for the abuse a bit more before we pronounce on solutions.
To what extent does impunity make it challenging to stop these human rights abuses, given that many actors, in fact, have gotten away with human rights abuses in different countries?
The thinking in Africa is beginning to change, and it's African civil society itself which is leading that debate and that argument. African human rights groups, African groups of lawyers are coming together and saying it's no longer acceptable for our leaders to decide that they're above the law. There has to be a law that covers everyone. The well-publicized case of Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir and his indictment by the International Criminal Court. The message goes out to others, which is that from now on, you will be held accountable if you commit these kinds of atrocities.
Does it look like perhaps it's going to take quite a long time before there can be full accountability and there can be systems where people who commit abuses can be taken to task immediately and face justice rather than wait forever?
I get a sense of optimism every time I reach Africa. Every time, whether I'm in East Africa, Southern Africa, Central or the West, Africa is always the world's leader in optimism. And Africans themselves are very clear where they want the continent to go. And I'm talking about average man and woman in the street Africans, not the political elites. I'm confident that they know what they want to achieve in their countries. They know it's going to take time. They know they have to work within some systems to change them. But I'm confident that that change will come.